to Felixstowe Matters on this Tuesday morning. Today we have Andy Smith in here with us, who is a councillor. He's come in to tell us about the investment onto Felixstowe Pier. Felixstowe Pier, as we were in the past, was created in 1905. And it's been through a lot of changes, and Andy will be able to give us a little bit of history, explain what's going on. Morning, Andy.
Good morning, Jacob.
How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
It's another sunny day in Felixstowe.
Well, near
just
enough.
About.
So before we get into the Felixstowe Pier, tell us a little bit about yourself, or what your sort of role is.
Okay, I've been a councillor on the town council for too long, most people would say, since 1983. And on the district since 1991. For the past 12 years or something, I've been deputy leader at the district council.
Okay.
And I have responsibility. We run what we call the cabinet system now. Cabinet responsibility for planning, all the planning applications and all that stuff, and for coastal management right up the coast as far as Walberswick.
Oh right. So you're involved in most of the planning, or all of the planning that goes on in Felixstowe?
In Suffolk Coastal as a whole.
In Suffolk Coastal, yes.
And my family have Felixstowe roots going back to before 1900.
Oh, really?
My grandfather was the town's printer for many years, from 1895 or thereabouts until well after the Second World War.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Wow. So you mentioned about the planning. You've been involved in schemes already. So shared space, for example, you were involved in.
Yes, we put the I was involved in a wide team on that. The county council, the district, the town, and others. There's been discussion for many years about pedestrianisation Hamilton Road, which raises a lot of heat on both sides.
Yes.
There was an experiment on that in 1988, I think it was, where it was Hamilton Road was closed to traffic for 6 months, and one or two businesses went out of business, and others came very, very close, and it was clear that it just wasn't working. It was killing the town. So that was very controversial at the time. We undid that and went back to having parking there. But there's always a lot of people who would like to get rid of cars, and delivery lorries and so on. It just isn't practical. I think you have to look at a town like Felixstowe, very different to the major centres like Colchester, Ipswich, Norwich. They have enough weight, if you like, enough to be a centre in their own right.
Yes.
Felixstowe is much more of a come and go, and so it really doesn't work. But there was a government scheme to promote something called shared space, where the idea is that you make it you cease to differentiate between road and path, cars and pedestrians. The idea is that everybody politely shares the road surface. And it works in remarkable places, not least, for example, Covent Garden in London, and various other places. And fortunately there was some government grant money available that the county council got hold of, and after a lot of discussion and talk, we did the scheme that we now have. And so that involved remodelling the centre of Hamilton Road, as everybody knows.
Yes.
All nice, fresh, and so on and so forth. Still allow cars to go through, but in a way where they effectively really can only go slowly.
Yes, indeed.
We were able, as part of that, to fulfil another long ambition, which was to cease to have the situation where the centre of your town, where's the centre of Felixstowe, the triangle, was some rather naff 1980s public toilets.
Yes.
They were due to be refurbished. We put that money together, and we were able to move the toilets over onto Crescent Road car park, and they're sort of very, very modern toilets with the very best disabled facilities and all that sort of thing, and then use the space for the canopy that went up to be an attraction in the centre of town. And I think it just works great. I just love it when the Sally Armour are in there playing a band, somebody's having some stalls, or an exhibition or display of this, that and the other, or just selling some bits and pieces. It's a real social centre for the town.
Nice focal point.
And then as part of that also we were able to, another long ambition was to do something about traffic, or Bent Hill being the main road for traffic to and from the seafront.
Oh yes, of course, that's changed completely.
And years ago I chaired, for a long time I chaired something called the Town Centre Management Group. One of the ideas that came out of that was at the top of Convalescent Hill which was very awkward, particularly if we were coming up, because the main road, the right of way was along the top.
Yep.
If you were coming up Convalescent Hill, you had to stop, and there was an awkward junction over to Tomlin Road. But nobody lives on Convalescent Hill, unlike South Hill and Bent Hill.
Yes. Yeah.
So it seemed to be the natural traffic route. So as part of the shared space, we remodelled that so that it's a smooth traffic run. Wolsey Gardens,
yes,
Convalescent Hill, and down onto the seafront, the same in the other direction. And amongst other things, that helped out people in South Hill, which is very narrow and had a lot of traffic going up and down. The traffic engineers create a desire line for the motorists, so the easiest thing. So it was a good package, and Bent Hill, of course, was made much nicer.
Yes.
So and Undercliff Road West was traffic calmed along in front of the town hall past the War Memorial. So that again becomes an area which is much more amenable to being in rather than just driving through.
So it's almost like we're creeping down to the seafront, and as the Evening Star has suggested, there is going to be some investment on the pier and the surrounding area. So before we get into that, the pier, what's the history of it?
Well, a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about the pier. The main one for many people being that the council should do something about it, or the council owns it. Well, no, the pier has never been owned by the council. It's never been part of our business in the direct sense. It was originally built between 1903 and opened in 1905 in the days in the Edwardian heyday of Felixstowe, when it was a very fashionable resort. And people used to come by steamer from London to visit Felixstowe. And of course the sea there is really quite shallow, and there was no way a steamer could berth anywhere near the beach. In fact, Felixstowe for many years was the third longest pier in the country. Southend was obviously the longest, everybody knows, but it was more than half a mile long.
Half a mile, yes.
And that was fine. But unlike many other seaside piers, the local one is Southwold, and some of the big piers at Brighton and Scarborough and so on, it never had amusements and any way of making money on it. So once the steamer trade ceased, it became more of a liability than an asset, really. But it was kept going through the 30s. There used to be a tram trunk, trundled all the way out to the end in those days. But then in the war, with the invasion scare, it was bombed in two places very successfully by the RAF to avoid that. So after the war, obviously the further part was redundant entirely. That was demolished. The inner end was rebuilt with new concrete supports underneath to replace the timber ones, and a concrete deck on top, but the sandwich in the middle of the original 1903 wooden structure. And that survived until the late 90s, by which time it had become entirely rotten underneath. I've got some photos at home of a survey that was taken from a boat looking up at the underside of the wooden structure, and a lot of it was just dead rotten, so it became a dangerous structure, and that's been its status from 98, I think, until recently, until now.
Because before that, I think it was 96 or something, there was an attempt to invest some money in, but that never seemed to...
well, yes, there wasn't, and at that stage, I think, I'm not sure it's been in the public domain before, it was offered to the council for £1.
£1?
But given what I've said about its we gracefully declined that one. Yes, and I think the genesis of the current idea was born around that time. But the question was, how on earth was it all going to be paid for, of course?
Exactly. And there's been a trust sort of formed afterwards to try and look after it.
No, not the pier. No, there's a trust looking after the Spa Gardens.
Oh, the Spa Gardens. Okay.
Yeah, no, the pier is wholly in private ownership. Stan Threadwell's company, which is, excuse me, Stan, Felixstowe Amusements, I think it is.
Right.
Family Amusements.
Yep. Okay. So it's been a pier that's just sort of been there to walk along in a while. Now it's just an amusement arcade,
just
basically.
the pier head, yeah.
So what's actually going to happen?
Well, the good news is that the company owned by Stan Threadwell has come up with a superb scheme. As you mentioned in your intro, according to the Evening Star, a £15 million investment. I'm not quite sure whether that might be accurate, but certainly a very, very substantial investment. And so what's to happen is they're going to demolish absolutely everything that you currently see, right down to seabed level.
Wow.
That's the pier itself and the pier head building and the rather flaky structure that it sits on, which has suffered over the years from as the beach level has gone up and down, and more often down than up, perhaps. So that's going to be demolished, and they're going to build effectively a new pier head, but on the grand scale.
Okay.
It'll be more than twice as long out to sea as the current building.
Yep.
Not twice as long as the pier.
Yeah.
Very much wider, and about twice the height, and a building which is a big semicircle at the seaward end.
Yep.
Round the outside there'll be a walkway, so you still get the the pier experience, just not as far out. Then the ground floor will have some of the same sort of thing as is there now in part, the retail on the frontage by the promenade, amusements, but and a bowling facility in there.
There will a bowling as well.
And then at the seaward end of that there'll be a cafe restaurant, obviously with an internal area with glazed doors that can be opened or closed according to whether it's July or January.
That'd be nice.
The other way around sometimes. And then there'll be another large sitting out area at the end, at the seaward end. Then the next level up, at the seaward end, there'll be what they call a mezzanine floor, a floor that covers half the building or part of the building, which will be a function room,
to be
again with a bar and all that sort of thing.
Oh, lovely.
I think the planning application says that will normally seat 200, but can be expanded to 325.
Wow, that's quite large.
So that can hold really, all manner of events, which will be great for the town.
Definitely.
And then above that, there'll be a round observation tower with a dome on top. That you'll be able to go up to, and I think they're going to have screens there with information from the dock about what ships you can see and that sort of thing.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so it'll be great.
So I think you also mentioned the fact that you're going to have to raise the promenade and
that's
stuff.
right. If you think about if you stand in front of the pier at the moment, you're obviously on the promenade, and you've got the flood wall behind you, which is sort of 4 or 5 feet high, and the current floor level of the pier building is about at eye level, about 5 feet up, with steps up to it, which mean A, that area is not particularly attractive, and B, it's not exactly welcoming into the pier. No. So what they're planning to do, which is quite imaginative and lateral thinking, I think, is to for that stretch in front of the new building to raise the level of the promenade to pretty much be exactly the same level as the flood wall is at the moment, which is almost identical to the level of the pier floor. So raise that level of the promenade. Obviously, then you need to be able to continue to walk along the promenade, so there'll be a ramp, sort of better, less steep than the disabled norm, up one side and down the other. Then there'll be steps the other side of what is the flood wall down into the leisure centre forecourt, big sort of wide semicircular feature steps. So there'll be a very natural and attractive entrance and way between the leisure centre forecourt, the leisure centre itself, obviously the car park, up onto the pier and in fact onto the promenade.
Oh, wow.
And there'll be disabled ramps for that as well and that sort of thing, which is I think a very good solution. And by the way, that keeps everything above any worst case flood level. Should there be a big tide, you'll still be able to get in and out of the pier if needs must.
Oh, brilliant. So I think the other thing that when you were showing me the diagrams before this, there's going to be a feature window or something along the front. Yeah,
quite remarkable really. Along the upper level, along the promenade frontage, what they call a feature window, which you can best describe really as a stained glass window with a mosaic of ships and Felixstowe history or something.